Life seems fast, doesn't it? Short sometimes. It just takes someone lifting off to the Freedom Forum to go, life feels short. Or it takes having a little one, a little tot, and you just watch the days go by and you go, what? It's a birthday weekend? What? How old are you? What? And you recognize the stages moving on. And those things that happen in life that remind us to be fully present in the moment are gifts if we're allowed and if we allow ourselves to use them for awakening, to use them for awareness, to use them for mindfulness, to use them not for fear and not for making us go, life is short, but for awakening the truth within us that says, life is now. Because life really isn't short. It's eternal. But when we don't recognize that life is now, it feels short because every moment happens and then it flies away. And we tend to live in the history trying to grab it and catch it back, or trying to live in the moments of the past, or we try to reach forward into what's next. And we very seldomly, as a collective, bring it right into now. And as an individual, that is our space for growth and potential. That is our space for awakening. So last week we had a conversation around following our dreams, around being accountable and taking responsibility for what we create collectively together, for what our lives stand for what we do with our lives, what we invest in, for our consciousness and our awareness, so that we recognize what is ours to do and that we support individuals on this planet living their dreams, living their heart's desires. But that could be misinterpreted, that could be misunderstood as saying this idea that, it's just okay to just be on this planet and go down paths of gluttony or misuse resources, misuse our divine intelligence, misuse our words, and be in the space that we cause suffering or we cause separation. And it's not that. It's not that we're not here to be giving the gift of ourselves and to be living and to be happy and to be experiencing the fullness of life. It is that we are here to be awakening and that we are responsible for our own awakening and our own contributions. And that when we do that for ourselves, we create a world where people are doing that. And when we create a world where people are doing that, people wake up more easily. Because we can see that these things that we chase after in the human condition, whether it be time, whether it be the past or the future, or whether it be stuff, or whether it be an interesting use of our resources, an allocation of our resources, that flying down all those paths in the search for happiness won't create happiness. Searching for things to create peace won't create peace. That in fact, solving things or resolving them on the level of consciousness is what creates peace, what truly creates plenty. We talked about how we have two lives, the one where we're living and the one where we feel alive. The one where we're living and the one where we feel alive. But what's interesting is that many of us don't know what it's like to come alive. Many of us just follow what the ego drives us to, or what the human condition says, or what we've inherited. And we go through life trying to accumulating, trying to get accolades, trying to achieve, trying to attain, trying to acquire. But we don't find ourselves arriving at peace or happiness or the good life in a moment. Thich Nhat Hanh says, many people are alive, but don't touch the miracle of being alive. Many people are alive, but don't touch the miracle of being alive. Do you believe you deserve to touch the miracle of being alive? Many of us have touched it from time to time. Can we embrace the possibility that we can live in it? That we can really live in the miracle of being alive? It takes one thing to live in the miracle of being alive. One thing. We'll get to that later. Thich Nhat Hanh also says, if you think that peace and happiness are somewhere else and you run after them, you will never arrive. If you think that peace and happiness are somewhere else and you run after them, you will never arrive. Because embodying peace and happiness is about our mindset. And we don't often check into our mindsets. So what's behind what we are doing? That's what matters. What is behind what we are doing, what we are saying, what we are thinking, what we are believing? Our energy matters. Sig Paulson calls it a field of operation, that we have a field. Some people call it a vibration. Some people call it energy. Call it whatever you want. But there is a lot going on behind the scenes that is not visible to our eyes. Agreed? Our energy matters. I was just looking at one of these videos that a friend sent to me on social media, and it had a metal table. I don't know. It had a metal table. You might have seen this. And then someone spread out sand on the table, sand all over the whole table. And then they just rubbed off just a part on the side. And then they took different instruments, like just different pieces of something, a ball, a stick, and just started rubbing the metal. And it made sound. It made vibration and sound. So, in the appearance, if there wasn't sand on the table, you might just think it's just making sound, right? And that might be interesting to your ears, but it made the sound. But because of all the white sand on the black table, as he started stroking it and moved to different instruments, it began to form into patterns. Right? So it'd be almost like snowflakes. So the sound that was created, the sound that was generated, brought patterns to the sand. It moved the sand in such a way that it looked different with the different instruments that he was using. So much is happening beyond the eyes. Maybe most things, if we could see, if we could realize, and that can awaken in us this idea that our energy matters, that how we show up matters. There was another experiment I saw with water, and it's water in a container. And first it's just pure water, and then they turn part of it into salt water, and they put oil in the water. But they shine a laser light through the water. And depending on what's in the water, it bends in different ways. When it's just water, it goes straight through, but it bends in different ways. So too does our energy with whatever we carry behind the scenes, with what is up that is not visible. We have an amazing congregant who has shared with me and gave me permission to share the story. She's had a liver transplant, and part of living with a liver transplant has brought her a gift of awareness that she did not have before. When we've had conversations about what we allow ourselves to experience or be present to as far as what brings us down, what could depress us, what could give us anxiety, what could bring us stress, she is very clear, crystal clear. I don't do that anymore. I don't engage in those ways anymore. Why? She said, I can't afford to. I see the effects, I feel the effects immediately in my body system, immediately in my body temple when I get caught up. Blessing or a curse? Do we think just because we don't feel it, because we may not have had a liver transplant, or we may not have a body that we have learned enough to understand that it has immediate repercussions from the sound that we're rubbing against the table, that the sand is actually moving into patterns of harmony or patterns of discord, and that affects the entire system, blessing or curse? The gift to actually know yourself, to know your body enough to know what's happening is incredible. And most of us have so much leeway, we don't really have to pay attention. We can keep drinking the toxicity, we can keep thinking the garbage, we can keep creating out of alignment with our integrity, with our true vision, with our values. And we've got a lot of leeway. Kind of like growing up on potato chips and hamburgers. Did anyone grow up putting a lot of stuff in your body that you would never put in your body now? Like the amount of soda. I mean, I remember what a snack was coming home. But sometimes later on, you can feel the effects of what you do, can't you? One little thing that you eat can change a whole afternoon. That's happening all of the time. Transplant or no transplant. If we're not aware of it, we are doing ourselves a disservice. Because we're not using the tools that are available to us. The key to living in the miracle of being is mindfulness. Mindfulness. When we are mindful and when we engage mindfulness, we open up a whole realm of possibilities that before seemed like they weren't available to us. So what is mindfulness, really? Well, mindfulness is awareness, right? It's awareness of our feelings, and on a deep level, with a deep practice, it's when we have a feeling, we become conscious of it, we begin to notice it, we notice where we might even feel it in our bodies. That could be hard to do. Have you ever had anyone ask you that? You're feeling sadness. Where do you feel that in your body? My mind goes like, I don't know. Like, I don't. In the beginning, I'm like, oh, you make that up. I don't know. Maybe I feel it in I don't know. But being aware of our feelings, listening so deeply that we begin to understand our systems and we begin to understand what's beyond our sight. Mindfulness is about understanding your thinking, watching your patterns of thinking, watching the beliefs that they spring forth from, and doing the deep spiritual work around those beliefs to see if you even agree with them on a conscious level. Knowing that they are creative. Mindfulness is looking at how we're acting, how we're showing up. Are we showing up consciously? Are we kind of asleep at the wheel? Mindfulness is about communication. It's about communicating and connecting. It's about processing or projecting our pain. It's about being aware if we're passive-aggressive or even aggressive-aggressive. I like the words aggressive-aggressive. I think we should be using that more often, even when we activate it ourselves. I'm being aggressive-aggressive here. Or stuffing our feelings. Mindfulness is about how we eat and what we eat. It's about how we walk, and it's about our breathing. I have a great friend who reminds me often to take a breath. Take a breath like you deserve the oxygen. Do you notice yourself? Are we aware of ourselves? Can we notice when we hop into a conversation without fully paying attention, whether or not we just hopped right over someone else, whether or not we're just off the whole conversation because we just flew in there? Mindfulness is about deep attention, paying attention. It's about our practice. It's about our process. It's about our patterns. And it's about our awakening. And it's not so shiny as all of the things we can accumulate and acquire or get accolades for. But it is probably the one most transformational tool for abundant living. Thich Nhat Hanh says to walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet. Walk as if you're kissing the earth with your feet. That statement can only come from someone who has mastered or is mastering mindfulness. Can we say that to ourselves when we're walking around on this planet? Walk as if your feet are kissing the earth. To have that level of awareness that brings us into the miracle of being. But so often, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, our bodies and our minds are not in the same location at the same time. I was playing with my little one on one of our very hot days. I put this little sprinkler in the front lawn, and it had those little squiggly things squiggling all over, and I had it kind of situated so it's mostly under the shade, and I was trying to show her how fun it is to go run and jump over it, that you can actually go all the way into it and jump over it. And so there she is watching me, and I'm looking at her, and I'm looking at the sprinkler, and I'm kind of, engaging a little storytelling here. And there it is, the little sprinkler. And I just start running through the yard, and I leap over the sprinkler, and into my face goes a pine tree. All over my face. And this was not like a pine tree where all the little needles and pieces are staying with the tree. It was all over, like tree, all over. And I was shocked. How is that there? What is that doing there? What just happened? And I'm thinking about spiders, and I'm thinking about all the stuff in my hair, and I'm rubbing off the tree grit. I leapt right over a hose because I was looking at the hose. I was looking at my daughter, and what I was not looking at all was the tree that was only about, the branches, let's say, coming down from the tree. And I mean a whole branch, like a whole bunch of tree life, just coming all the way here, all the way there on this big branch that was leaning down. And I just slammed right into it. I don't think that taught her very well how fun sprinklers are. Because I spent the next bit of time taking the little squiggly things and, what are you doing, Mama? I'm rinsing the tree off my body. Go ahead. You have a turn. But how often do we do that in life? We do it all the time. We go walking right into something that's going to muck things up. With just a little mindfulness, we can shift a whole lot of life. A whole lot of life. Most commonly, people think about how we spend our time on this planet and how we spend this life in kind of two categories. People think, I should have a life of service, a life where I'm giving, a life where I am contributing, creating good for others, adding to the collective good. And then another line of thinking is that I should have a life of happiness, that I should be happy, and I should follow that. And often people find themselves in one category or the other. Two paths, two choices, happy or service, doing good for others or being happy. I think there is a misunderstanding of both. A misunderstanding of both in the collective. I don't think service is meant to give us a full life of self-sacrifice that's not about being happy, that's about lack. And I don't think that following happiness, doing what makes you come alive, has to be about self-gratification, about being selfish, about only getting our needs met and only searching after contentment. I think this whole idea is an illusion, and I think that mindfulness will show us a line where the two meet. That when we engage in a life of mindfulness, when we become aware of what is within us and what we create, we find that there is a space where we can glow with a life of connectedness, a sense of contentment about being on the planet, connectedness with our wholeness, the interconnection of life. And when we walk that line, we find that service and happiness commingle. That in fact, we are here to have both. That in fact, the miracle of being is to be attentive, to be mindfulness, have mindfulness around our happiness, around our peace, but not to go searching for it, purchasing it, trying to vie for its attention, but to recognize that it is a path, not a destination. And that service is not something that we need to agonize over, but it is the byproduct of being alive, of being truly alive. In a lot of spiritual circles, people say, we need to get out of the way and let God do God's work. We need to just get out of the way. But in unity, we teach that we simply become the way. We become the way. Unity author and minister Sig Paulson said, in man, the word light or self becomes self-conscious, as it inevitably must, before its full potential can be realized and expressed. Each person is to draw on the treasures available to and through the self of his being, and to give it unique and unduplicated expression, give it personality, far from getting himself out of the way. Each person is to be the way that word becomes flesh, the way the light shines in the world. He says to attempt to become selfless, to get oneself out of the way, to try to be impersonal, is to oppose the flow of creative action. And it leads, he says, to all kinds of self-trouble, self-concern, selfishness, insecurity, fear, condemnation, illness, and death. And those are the fruits on the tree of this self-rejection and self-obliteration. He goes on to say, there is no such thing as selflessness anywhere in creation, because the whole creative process is dependent on individualization or differentiation, or we might call it the selfing activity, through which the universal finds expression. Without the principle of selfhood, there would be no creation, no expression. Through the process of selfing, the invisible becomes visible, the light becomes form. So can we trust that when we engage mindfulness in our lives, that we can walk the line of the miracle of being and allow our true self to express? That self that is here to be of service, that self that is here to have a deep kind of happiness that does not come from getting. The human condition will always teach us and tell us that peace comes through things, and that it is attainable in a different time, in a different space, in a different place. But it is right in front of us all the time. It is right within us all the time. And the key to how we spend this time, right here and right now on the planet, the key is mindfulness. So a little bit of tea bag wisdom from the little bags of tea. It's not going to matter in 5 years. If it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes being upset by it. If it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes being upset by it. And gratitude is not about what you receive. It's about how you receive what is there. Gratitude is not about what you receive. It's about how you receive what is there. Life is all about present moment awareness, moving us out of the illusion of our separateness and into our unity, out of time and space and into beingness, out of acquiring and into giving, into becoming the way. Attention is a learned behavior. Attention is a learned behavior. And mindfulness is an expression of our attention. Subtle shifts in awareness can have major implications on our lives. Will we engage in our potential? Namaste.